Hi, how are you? Yeah, I'm okay, thanks. Where am I? Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm out in the woods, sitting beside a river. If you've looked at the title of the episode, you'll understand how literal a move this is. It's nice here, obviously. I walk around here a lot, but you might not, so I'll try and paint a picture. It's a warm day, dappled sunlight breaking through the trees. The water is pretty, in the unkempt way that wild rivers are. Overgrown foliage along the banks, a couple of ducks, very old stone bridge linking one side of this valley to the other. But I'm here for reasons beyond it being nice, and beyond it being a very literal hook for this intro. I went to a show this weekend. I won't say what, I'll leave that to your imagination. That's not something I normally do, so any evaluation I give is pretty qualified, but it was good. The show itself, a euphoric tribute to the transformative power of art and music, the presentation of it inventive and spectacular. It was, necessarily, an overwhelming experience. It's like an audio-visual battering ram on the senses. Something that's wonderful in the moment, but that it's still a psychic relief to leave. Forgive the obvious point, but it's good to clear your head. The world in that show, and the worlds in the games we're talking about today, are all vibrantly drawn, all in different ways and all to different ends, and all overwhelming in their own ways, all enhanced by a break, a breather. And so, we're here. And as you're here too, you can help me with the little thing that I've been working on. It's a little essay on the history of copy and paste. I'm only half kidding. So quickly, the act of transferring data from one part of a computer buffer to another dates back to the 1960s, but it wasn't until 1974 that it really got up and running. It was then that Lawrence G. Tesla, affectionately known as Larry, and some colleagues at Xerox PARC implemented several text editors that use cut/copy and paste commands to move and copy text around. This was brought to the mainstream with the Lisa in 1983, and the rest is a history of streamlined workflows, low-effort emails, and botched code. Can that be a game mechanic? Well, the 2025 Microsoft Excel World Championships take place in Las Vegas in December, so you tell me. However, I spent a whole minute and a half Googling copy and paste gameplay mechanics, and that returned no useful results. Not even the game we're talking about today, or an obvious AAA example released less than a year ago at the time of recording, in September 2024. That struck me as odd, but it's a real tick in the pro column of the first game that we're talking about today. Now this is a nice place to sit, but I've got those three different worlds to dive into now, by turns colourful, claustrophobic, metropolitan and just plain weird. So, it's time to go. Hi, I'm Andrew. Welcome to Dialogue Tree. This is episode 11, playlist number 2. Up first, Ruffy and the Riverside. Ruffy and the Riverside is a 3D puzzle adventure game, released June 26, 2025, on PlayStation, Xbox, Switch and PC. It was published by 5N Games and is the debut project from the German development studio Socrates Laboratories. Their name is a portmanteau of Socrates and the German word zocken, meaning playing video games. That is to say, it's a joke that only makes sense in one language. I like that. In Ruffy and the Riverside, you play the titular Ruffy, a squat little bear adjacent dude with a bee companion who lives a cosy life in the idyllic land of Riverside. That piece, of course, is shattered by a world-shaking event and the subsequent revelation that Ruffy himself is the chosen one, the one squat little bear adjacent dude who can fix this shaken world. You'll do this out of an upgradable hub town, off of which branches a 3D world made up of a number of biomes. You'll explore these biomes in order to locate and recover the MacGuffins of the game. In this case, the letters that make up the Riverside sign, that sits, Hollywood-esque, on the hill overlooking the town. These are the things you need to restore balance to the world. You must run, sprint and jump, and there's a nice bee-assisted float in there. But most importantly, solve puzzles in order to do so. And we'll get to those puzzles in due course. So this is a new game, less than a week old at the time this episode goes out. But recording a few days after release, I have the luxury of being able to gauge the temperature on this game. Metacritic currently has it at a mixed or average 73 from 9 critic reviews, while OpenCritic has it at 79 from 40. PlayStation Universe gave it a 9 out of 10, saying, quote, "A delightfully inventive 3D platformer that relies on much more than nostalgia," end quote. While Nintendo Life gave it an 8, saying, quote, "Ruffy and the Riverside is an enjoyable return to the colourful 3D platforming romps of the late 1990s, and it's one that brings its own clever idea to the table, and is one of the better odes to this sort of caper that I've played," end quote. At the other end of the scale, Push Square gave it a 5, saying that the main mechanic felt underdeveloped, the story and dialogue excessive, and the platforming slippery. I disagree with that last point, but there's something in the former too, and those are points echoed across the other low-scoring reviews. I think all the assessments here are accurate, but the low scores are too low and the high scores too high. It's a game that sits somewhere in the middle, and your response to it rests on how willing you are to overlook the flaws in an otherwise charming game. Let's get into this a bit more in the main review today. The first thing that strikes you about Ruffy is one of two headline items on the game: the look. This is a 3D world, in which all the characters are 2D sprites. The shorthand for this is well known at this point. It's the Paper Mario art style, a visual style common enough now that we can infer that that game had a pretty significant impact on game developers of a certain age. There's been several examples of this released in recent years: Bug Fables, Cult of the Lamb, Here Comes Nico, and the one I feel that has hit the most in indie game circles, Demon Turf. It even goes as far back as 2013's Don't Starve, but that's a thread I'm not pulling on today. This is a common art style because it's a good art style. It's bold and appealing, when done right. 2D sprites just seem to have an inherent charm to them, and personally, I think we see far more endearing character designs in this style than we do in 3D. There seems to be a world of difference between the 2D designs in those games, as well as, of course, the cute little avatars in Paper Mario, versus the strangely off-putting 3D models of characters like Crash Bandicoot or Yooka-Laylee. It's a bold, appealing art style when done right. And that's just about the case here. I'm not sold on the art direction for all of these 2D sprites. The hooded crows are cool, though I don't think I find Ruffy himself as cute as I should. But the animation on them, it really is something. They're flat, but lent an uncommon liveliness through their constant movement and quite scratchy looking texture. Each one looks like a physical piece of paper fidgeting on the screen. Ruffy himself is constantly doing something with his arms. This kind of weird finger clicking dance. Is it annoying? Yes. Is it a small touch that adds a lot of character? Yes. This animation style is elaborated on in an interview that Patrick from Socrates gave to Netto's Games Room. This interview doesn't elaborate on who Patrick is or the role he plays as Socrates, but let's just take it as is. In this interview, Patrick elaborates on the artistic leanings of their studio. Quote, "We started as a team of artists that made a lot of video game related art, like paintings, sculptures, etc. We even did some art shows supported by Nintendo, like the Printing Miiverse art show, where we showed over 10,000 Miiverse drawings." End quote. They go on to point out that, quote, "Everything is drawn by hand. The textures, the character, the inventory, the map, and more. Ruffy alone has over 600 drawings, because whatever he does had to be drawn from all sides." End quote. Everything in this game is hand-drawn. This, should you be wondering, is endearingly mad. Ruffy himself has 600 animations alone. I think that shows. I think you can look at this game without that knowledge and it stand out from games with a similar look. I think you can see there's something a bit more going on visually, and that's a real credit to this studio. The ambition and the effort pops off the screen. It's the 3D worlds around these sprites that are more of a mixed bag for me. They're colourful, with a studied, cartoony charm to them, but so busy and so overstuffed with items, objects and wacky, garish NPCs that you just feel bombarded by constant foreground. It feels like someone is grabbing me by the back of the head and pushing my face into a pop-up children's storybook, not caring about how I'm ruining the cardboard for subsequent readers. A game I've seen this compared to is Tinykin, another that features 2D sprites in a 3D world. In Tinykin, the worlds are as equally jammed full of stuff, but through their scale, don't feel as compressed and claustrophobic as this. This issue extends to the world map, which you're going to spend quite a bit of time with. I like it in principle, a colourful cartoon map fitting the overall style, rather than the visually disconnected boxes I've seen in several Metroidvanias. But in practice, it's hard to read. Just as busy as the overworld, but even more squashed. The wealth of icons, items and other blobs making it a bit of a chore to interpret. That compressed overworld is part of how Ruffy captures the 90s mascot platformer vibe that it's going for. The other part of how it captures this, for better or for worse, is a whole lot of visual pop-in. That perhaps speaks to a lack of experience on the part of the developer. And there are other elements here that betray that. The direction of the cinematics, for example, is odd. In the sequence where the big bad is revealed and wreaks havoc on the world, you get a little sequence showing this. Now, where you'd expect big, wide, dramatic shots, emphasising the grandiosity of the event, the camera instead shoots the action from behind trees, rocks, and other objects, the big bad framed in the distance, any sense of scale lost. As I'm addressing the negatives of the game here, I might as well get this out of the way. The story. Now, I don't play wacky 3D platformers about funny little Ewok dudes for the story, but the delivery of it in Ruffy really does get in the way of the experience. There is far, far too much dialogue, a large amount of redundancy, and while it's delivered for laughs, I didn't find much of it particularly funny. Now, normally this wouldn't be an issue, but especially in the early hours, it actively prevents you getting into the game from playing with the fun toolset that this game has presented you with. It did give me pause. Do I want to carry on with this? But every day's a school day, and today the lesson was patience. The game does eventually get out of its own way. That chatty mole pops up less frequently, and the guide rails become less obvious. Socrates do, eventually, let you get on with it. So that's a few drawbacks that are indicative of a wider problem. A slight lack of polish and maturity undermining the otherwise promising elements of the game. But those promising elements are there, and fortunately, they are all in the gameplay. You may have seen trailers for this game and, like me, thought it was a 3D platformer, the latest in the current crop of expressive platformers, where fluid movement and varied traversal options are emphasised. But it's not. Platforming is not really a focus in Ruffy, to the extent that I'd say 3D puzzle adventure game is a more accurate description. And the gameplay hook is this. You, Ruffy, weird little Ewok-esque Ruffy, have the ability to copy elements of the world and paste them elsewhere, with the aim to solve a variety of environmental puzzles. You may be presented with a waterfall you need to ascend, and the only way to do so being to copy a grassy texture, paste it onto the waterfall, and then climb the resulting vine ladder. You may be presented with a door bolted with iron locks, forcing you to create a number of magnets to move the bolts and remove the door. You may find a puzzle painted on a wall, a little platforming challenge, which you cannot traverse as it is. The solution is to find objects around you, copy them, paste them onto the objects in this painting, changing their estate appropriately, water to fire, stone to wood, that sort of thing, allowing you to leap in and then solve the challenge. The whole idea of changing environmental states is not a new one, but this implementation of it is. And even if it does just boil down to clicking one object and then another, it works. The inherent playfulness of this mechanic feels universally appealing. It taps into a fundamentally childlike impulse, the constant what if. Patrick from Socrates elaborates on that in that interview with Neto's Game Room. Quote, "The idea for the swap came about by a funny coincidence. I was looking at old level drawings and there was this drawing of a waterfall. The drawing was black and white, and I couldn't tell if it was a waterfall or a lava flow. It could really be either, and I thought to myself, how cool would it be if it could really be both? What if you were able to swap the texture and the world would change? The idea for the swap was born." What if? Personally, I think that's a great jumping off point for any creative work. And it's at this point that we need to sound the Nintendo klaxon. Now, it's rote to call this a Nintendo-esque mechanic, but it's okay, because the developers themselves call this out in that same interview. Quote, "We think our game really has strong Nintendo vibes," they say. They're not wrong. This is exactly the sort of mechanic you could see Nintendo basing one of their secondary IPs around. It feels like the sort of hook that a Kirby game on the DS might have used, or maybe a new Yoshi game. I see it that way, as it's not as flexible or expressive as the mechanics you see in modern A-tier Nintendo. Even the most recent 2D Zelda left more room for player expression. What I mean is that, for all the promise the game makes, copy and paste the world, they say, there is only one solution to each puzzle, and you're not allowed to wander outside of those parameters, no matter how sound your logic. But let's be realistic and fair. You can't expect that level of sophistication from a new studio. So while this limitation is worth noting, I don't think it's a deal breaker. You're going to paste a lot of vines onto a lot of waterfalls, but intuiting how to tackle each puzzle is engaging. And the game is full of opportunities to do so. There are a number of collectibles, butterflies, dreamstones, Itoi, which is this game's Korok, and finding any number of these requires exploration, puzzle solving, and low-stakes platforming. Some of these are an upgrade currency, some of these are just there for completionists. This approach extends to some of the gameplay. There's a load of little diversions thrown in, from racing to floating challenges, and even this odd painting minigame where you can design patterns and paste them onto the overworld. While the central gameplay hook of Ruffy perhaps isn't as shackles-free an experience as you might expect or want, Socrates obviously tried to make the most out of it, and of the world around it, cramming it with a wealth of cute, creative distractions, a wealth of those what-if moments. Now, I think there's one last thing to note. Movement, platforming, and the camera. All characteristics of 3D platformers that have been historically tricky to nail. Well, they're absolutely sound here. Ruffy is responsive, with a sprint that feels substantial. Your shadow is always visible in a jump, and the camera, in my experience, didn't get stuck on any geometry or hamper my progress in any way. I've spoken about the importance of movement and traversal to me before, and I was concerned Ruffy would hew too close to its 90s touchstones and replicate, intentionally or otherwise, the janky game feel. It doesn't, and that's another credit to this new developer. So this game is a mixed bag. The story and dialogue really did annoy me, but the moment-to-moment is rewarding in a basic but still fun way, and the music, that you've heard throughout this review, is an eclectic mix from a range of composers. That is to say, I'm not dropping this game. It's charming and engaging enough to motivate me to play on. This debut may not possess the level of freedom its mechanics hint at, but the ambition, the whimsy, the charming what-if, makes it a journey that feels worth taking. For now, that's Ruffy and the Riverside. From an ambitious debut held back by growing pains, to a sophomore effort that demonstrates the power of experience, we're leaving the idyllic cartoon world of Riverside, and we're heading into the city. A busy, dense city, plagued with a whole host of very modern problems. Next up, Pipistrello and the cursed Yoyo. Released on May 28th, 2025 on PC, Nintendo Switch, all the Xboxes and all the PlayStations, Pipistrello and the Cursed Yoyo is an action-adventure game played from a top-down perspective, in what the developer calls the world's first Yoyo-vania. That developer, Brazil's Pocket Trap, made the well-received Dodgeball Academia, a colourful sports RPG released in 2021. Based on their track record, this studio seems to be genre guys, hopping between established types of game and bringing a unique spin to them. And so it is with Pipistrello, a top-down adventure in what we must forever call the old-school Zelda style, only this time with a heavy emphasis on Game Boy Advance era aesthetics. The game was featured in a Nintendo Direct in 2024, generated a fair amount of anticipation off the back of that, and received a decent amount of attention on release. Based on the reviews, this seems justified. Metacritic has this at 86, while OpenCritic has it at an 89. It got high scores pretty much across the board, with 9s from PlayStation Universe, Nintendo Life, and Noisy Pixel, and 4.5 out of 5 from So Many Games and Slant. Noisy Pixel say, quote, Pipistrello and the Cursed Yoyo delivers a classic, challenging Metroidvania adventure with inventive mechanics, retro visuals, and a surprisingly nuanced narrative, making it a standout indie gem from Pocket Trap. Nintendo Life said, quote, Pipistrello and the Cursed Yoyo is a masterclass in retro Zelda-like game design, expertly fusing classic mechanics with creative new ideas to make for a thoroughly memorable and worthwhile experience. Much like its title character, this one has a lot of cool tricks up its sleeve. The few lower scores, a 7 from Checkpoint Gaming stands out, cite the old school feel and difficulty as drawbacks. I feel these are pretty minor, particularly subjective drawbacks, and that the wealth of positive commentary speaks more accurately to the qualities of the game. So, what is a Yoyo-vania? Well, it's a portmanteau of Yo-Yo and Metroidvania, designed to impart both genre and mechanic in one catchy, marketable phrase. But you knew all that. In Pipistrello and the Cursed Yoyo, you are Pipit, the spoiled teenage heir of Pipistrello Industries, an energy company run by your aunt. In the opening sequence, you're off to meet her to grab some more allowance to enable your lifestyle of hanging out, practicing your yo-yo. Things do not go to plan. Your aunt is confronted by a gang of thugs who feel aggrieved by her business practices. They reveal a machine of some kind that's intended to do something. Suffice to say, things escalate. Words are exchanged, conflict occurs, the end result being that your aunt is atomically disassembled, her soul split between 4 mega batteries, and your yo-yo. The thugs take off with those batteries to power their various nefarious industries. The family company in ruins, and you thrown down a hole. You're off on a grand adventure to recover the batteries and restore both Aunt and Pipistrello Industries to their former glory. And you're going to do that, not with a sword, spear, or bow and arrow, but with a yo-yo. And you're going to do so in a recognisably bleak suburban environment, unrecognisable to this genre. There is satire here, there is scepticism here. There is a world here blighted by greed and capitalism, and it's made all the more dangerous because of it. The ideological failings of this world feeding directly into the friction pushing back against you. Sidewalks collapse underfoot due to lackadaisical construction work. Junk food enslaves the populace through mass-produced chemical additives. There is endlessly busy, endlessly aggressive traffic. I die more times in this traffic than I do in combat. I spend more time being mown down by the theoretically friendly NPCs than I do the hostile ones. This is a suburban environment from hell. A disarmingly cute mirror held up to ours. It's like someone is grabbing me by the back of the head and is pushing my face into a TV showing Robocop, not caring about the childhood trauma caused by that toxic waste scene. But I'm not really going to be talking about that now, because I've been invited by Jacob Price of the Pre-Order Bonus podcast onto their Indie Impressions bonus show to talk about this game. So follow me on Blue Sky for updates on that, I guess. Now on that show, I can see us really getting into the mechanics of this game. The yo-yo, the combat, traversal, secrets, upgrades and badges. So while I don't want to spoil that, I think I can say this much. Where Ruffy had a neat idea limited in scope, In Pipistrello, Pocket Trap have clearly thought about the central gimmick of their game and worked hard to extrapolate everything unique about the whole idea of a yo-yo into novel, interesting gaming mechanics. It's a game that's had an obvious level of care and attention given to this hook, and if those review scores weren't enough of a clue, it's a pretty good game. And if you're even vaguely interested in what it looks like it's doing, you should give it a go. There's a demo available that sold me immediately, but more on that another day. So, what can we talk about that doesn't spoil that show, without going too hard on the gameplay? Well, we can walk the dog around the edges. The look is retro, but respectful. The incentive to explore plentiful. The upgrade system an effective balance of risk and reward, and a host of accessibility options that always just suggest to me that the developers really care about their game and their audience. There's a badge system too, but I love a badge system, so take that with a grain of salt. What we'll focus on here instead, that I might not do elsewhere, is this. The music in this game is great. You've heard the title theme earlier, but this is the Galaneros district theme, something catchy enough in its own right, elevated to the status of chronic earworm by my constant death in that region. There's also a guest appearance from none other than Yoko Shimomura, the legendary composer responsible for the soundtracks to Final Fight and Street Fighter 2, as well as her contributions to Live Alive and Super Mario RPG. Here, she contributes to the Pipistrello Industries music, which sounds like this. It's not the standout piece on the soundtrack, but it's still a good time, and I hope it brings attention, and by that I mean sales, to this game that it might otherwise not have got. For now, that's Pipistrello and the Cursed Yo-Yo. The last game today is something different, in a few ways. I have a computer, but I don't play games on it. I have a Steam account, but again, I don't play games on it. The latest entry in the ongoing Steam Next Fest series happened between June 9th and 16th this year, and I didn't play any games in it. This is a defect of a video games podcaster that should probably be corrected, so I update the Steam app, I gaze appalled at how I can have a backlog on a gaming platform that I don't even use, and I jump into the demos. Mina the Hollower. Let's go. Okay, so that demo is no longer available. Same for Possessors. Henry Half-Haired, Gecko Gods, and Mio, Memories in Orbit, all look cool, but they're all Windows only. Oh, come on. Surely this shouldn't be... what's this? Morsels. I remember this. This was in some showcases last year. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it looks great. This kind of woozy and warped VHS kind of aesthetic. Top down, easy to understand, exploration action game of some sort. Let's give it a go. So I start it up and get going. I'm a mouse, I think. I'm presented with two cards, each with a drawing of some weird creature on them. I'm not really sure what I'm doing here. I can't really read what's on those cards. Is this a card game? Like a deck builder? Well, I don't normally play on keyboard, so I'm not sure what to press. There must be an info button. Okay. Well, I've chosen one of those cards. Oh, cool. And my mouse has turned into the creature that was on that card. Right, I'm free to wander around now. That woozy, warped VHS look is intact. It kind of looks like Animal Well, that game was good. This looks like it could be leaning into that, so let's explore. Is this a creature collector? I can't tell. There are things. There's things trying to kill me, right? Oh, God. Keyboards are rough to play on. Let's find a controller. Right, I've got a controller. I can fight back now. Oh, it's a twin stick game. Oh, I didn't expect that. I seem to be picking up loads of stuff, but I don't know what any of it does. Oh, where am I going? This is a bit of a maze. I wonder if I'll get any more cards. Oh, look, a ladder. I can go up there. Let's explore. So I'm going up to a new... Oh, God, it's a dungeon crawling roguelike. Now, I'm not saying I have an addictive personality, but if I haven't completed Wordle and connections before 8 AM every day, I get this weird burning sensation on the back of my neck and the sound of rushing water in my ears. I get the same whenever a roguelike goes on sale, the sound of rushing water replaced by that little guy from Spelunky, suddenly sitting on my shoulder whispering, "This one, this is the one." I'm simultaneously compelled and repelled by roguelikes, in love with the mechanics, the combat ones mostly, but traumatised by the loop. The idea of spending hours on a single game to the reward of no linear progress. I've bought and played countless roguelikes, but rolled credits on precisely one, going through hell, hint, to do so. But that's a story for another day. The realisation that this game mashes genre I'm unfamiliar with one I'm all too aware of, is, bluntly, a tempting morsel on the hook. And yes, in this metaphor, I am the fish. Morsels is a card-based creature-collecting, dungeon-crawling roguelike, a game that falls just shy of the word limit for genre descriptors. In it, one day, cards fell from the sky. These cards are sources of power, but that power can only be harnessed by certain individuals. One thing leads to another, and now the world has been enslaved by a superior race of elders who are capable of harnessing the power of these cards. You are a strange, bug-eyed little mouse, who can somehow also use the power of the cards, and who resolves to use his power to battle his way out of the depths, from the bottom to the top, one level at a time. You choose a card, transform into the creature on it, and head out into the world. Like the games that precede this, Morsels has a unique attention-grabbing look. That warped, woozy VHS look I mentioned earlier, I'm sure you can picture it. It's bent at the edges, coated in film grain. Vaporwave, but gross. When you enter, you quite literally drop out of what looks like a waste pipe. It all looks like it could be taking place around the corner from your adventures through Animal World, only more lurid, more grotesque. The world, covered in scan lines, drips and oozes. The title screen looks like you're descending through an intestine. You have the constant impression that you're inside something biological. If these walls could talk, some of them probably can. I really like the feel of Morsels. Your strange, bug-eyed mouse moves with an appealing bounce, smoothly and cleanly, with a nice dash in all directions. The twin shooting feels good, and I much prefer top-down shooters to isometric. The angle's just easier to read. I bounce around, shooting and dashing, avoiding a few environmental hazards, just about taking in the visual variety here. Pus and fur, the occasional flower blooming through the muck. At the end of a floor, you'll come across one of several NPCs that offer you a reward or a challenge. There's a chicken that runs a fried chicken shop, someone that gives you a ticket to get to someone else on the next floor. But my favourite is a crocodile in a trilby hat that offers a minigame. That minigame is a side-scrolling shmup-style thing, where you avoid waves of enemies, grab diamonds and dodge a handheld gun that pops up occasionally, all in neon-tinged, line-drawn style. It's a nice diversion, simple but effective, with no penalty for death. I like the feel, I can read the angles, but I can barely read the rest of the gameplay. It's roguelike hard. Your weapons are limited in ammo and scope, but those of the enemies are not. The cooldown on your dash is significant enough to hugely limit its utility. There are a lot of enemies, all coming in a variety of unpleasant flavours, and you are quickly swarmed in even the earliest floors. None of the items are explained to you. I don't know what a health item is, or if there even are any, or how to upgrade my toolset. The kill rooms are brutal. I find myself leaning into the screen, inching ever closer to this sticky, dripping environment. I'm sweating. The current heatwave, an appropriately unpleasant environment for this game. I keep going, and the impeccable vibes are instrumental in this. The music, which you've been listening to here, is composed by Sam Webster, who produced the soundtrack to Grindstone. It matches the woozy feeling of the game perfectly. I try several runs, the loop growing on me like one of the many gross, wet things in this world. Despite the challenges, like all the dungeon crawling roguelikes that have come before, and inevitably all the dungeon crawling roguelikes that are yet to come, Morsels has got me. I'll be watching this one, and it seems likely that I'll return to this world when the full game releases later in 2025. For now, that's Morsels. That was a lot. 3 different worlds, all overwhelming in different ways. I need a break. I'm back by the river now. Kind of necessary after all that. Some natural light and air. Next thing I play, it's going to need to be something different. And then it hit me. The sea. I start up a particular app on the Switch 2 for the first time. I start up a particular game for the first time in 20 years. I don't play. I don't need to. The memory will probably always be better than the reality. I just listen. The air, the sea. I just listen. Thanks for listening. The artwork for the show was produced by Pixel Benny. You can find a link to the newsletter for this episode in the show notes, which includes links to everything we've talked about. You can find the show online at dialoguetree.cc. Talk to you next time.